Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
I want to move over to Sandy Ryan. I know you've just said that. I saw you tweet the WBO, I think, earlier, trying to install Sandy Ryan as mandatory. I mean, didn't really look in the pre-fight interviews that she was all there, Sandy Ryan, to be perfectly honest.
I don't think you can be. I mean, look, she comes out of the hotel. There's a car parked waiting for her to come out of the hotel, right? There's people inside. I've got all the CCTV, so have the NYPD. The whole thing's a setup, right? So whoever's involved, and I'm not pointing any fingers, but it's all coming out, right? So someone runs out of a car, runs in front of her, throws paint all over her. She has to gather herself. She has to go to her room. She has to take all her clothes off. She has to scrub all the paint off her body and soak through to her legs. Try and get that all off. Then she has to make her way to Madison Square Garden, having to get her head round what has just happened. She's emotionally shot to pieces. And she's gone out, by the way, and given an unbelievable performance. I actually thought she edged the fight, but it was a very close fight. Could have gone either way. But it's not fair. And what I'm saying to WBO is, and it's not the WBO's fault, but that is your champion that has been assaulted outside a hotel, right, in a premeditated attack, which we will get to the bottom of. It's not fair. And by the way, the fight was like that as well. So you need to order the rematch. And if they've got any compassion, they will. And by the way, if Michaela Meyer has any, she will also take the rematch. But we're also talking to George Warren about the Chantel Cameron fight, which is another brilliant fight. So we'll have to see. But I'm not going to let that lie. I don't think it's fair to Sandy Ryan on the night of her life for someone to do that, to try and, disrupt her career. Is bang out of order.
You can't hope to get Sandy a Michaela Meyer rematch with a guilt trip.
You can't.
By saying that Michaela is devoid of compassion if she doesn't give Sandy a rematch.
Michaela doesn't care.
Michaela said it after the fight. There are other champions at the weight that she wants to fight, that she wants to unify with, so even if she does give Sandy a rematch, it ain't gonna be right away.
Michaela Meyer might appear a hypocrite to some, taking a stance like that when she wanted an immediate rematch with Alicia Baumgartner. She wanted an immediate rematch with Natasha Jonas. They didn't give it to her.
Now she is doing to Sandy what they did to her.
Well, I guess that makes her a hypocrite.
Take a number and join the club, because there's no shortage of hypocrites in the sport of boxing. Here's a prime example. Rick Glaser, boxing insider Rick Glaser, who I'm sure you're all familiar with. He's a hypocrite, a giant hypocrite, throwing stones in a glass house. He claims the reason he's always taking shots at Eddie is because Eddie's a hypocrite.
Because two of Eddie's fighters tested positive for a banned substance, and he stood by them. He defended them.
For that, Rick Glaser doesn't like Eddie Hearn. He thinks he's a hypocrite. You know who he does like? Oscar De La Hoya.
Just the other day, he was going up to bat for him.
Saying, I will add that I've done business for almost 2 years with Oscar De La Hoya, President Eric Gomez, and the entire Golden Boy staff. You can count me as greatly impressed and very appreciative. He doesn't keep the energy for Oscar that he keeps for Eddie, even though 2 of Oscar's fighters tested positive for a banned substance, just like Eddie's.
Oscar De La Hoya stood by his fighters, just like Eddie, and for some reason, Rick doesn't keep the energy for Oscar that he keeps for Eddie.
Well, I guess that makes Rick a hypocrite. That you got this and that to say about Conor Benn and Dillian White and any matchroom fighter that pops hot, but you don't have that energy for Golden Boy fighters that have popped hot, like Canelo. More recently, Ryan Garcia.
Why not?
Because he works with Golden Boy. He gave the game away. The reason he's not critical of them is because he works with them. So I guess that makes Rick a hypocrite.
That makes him what he's accusing Eddie of being.
Hurry up and land the plane. This is dragging on.
Michaela Meyer appearing a hypocrite to some in a sport full of hypocrites, rife with hypocrites.
She's just another. People, in a very general sense, are not that altruistic. Many of them are just opportunistic.
They're opportunists.
Rick won't criticize Golden Boy, even if it makes him appear a hypocrite, because he works with them. This works for Michaela. She won the belt. She's not going to give Sandy an immediate rematch, and that might make her seem like a hypocrite, but oh well.
What do you want to burn her at the stake? Sue her? Alienate her? Ostracize her? You better grow up.
You better, because even though boxing is sometimes referred to as the noble sport, there are a lot of less than noble people in it.
And to be in it and succeed, sometimes you have to be less than noble. Opportunistic.
I think Sandy did enough that she deserves a rematch. And if it were up to me, she would get one.
But I ain't no cockeyed optimist. It's just not the way things work in the sport of boxing. That's not the way things work in life. It just isn't.
When I say that?
Oh, I thought that's what I'm asking my man who love you. I thought you said that, and you said that some monkey shit he's telling me right now. I told him you on the show.
Oh,
You call
yeah,
blacks
yeah.
monkeys too?
Yeah.
Nah. See, that's why everybody be pulling that out of context.
No,
Like,
that's what I'm asking. Listen, I didn't know you was on the show. I'm trying to get everything that these my friends love about you.
Nah, I love that. I love that. Nah, for sure. Look, so there's 3 words that we can't say in any industry, right? And I think we all know that. However, what I just did there.
What are those 3 words?
I ain't saying it. I ain't saying it because one thing about me, there is always a line. There's always a line. You know what I'm saying? I learned that from Tupac and the other greats out there. So I ain't gonna press that. But all I did, man, was just hit a right on the belt line. Just punch on the belt line, but it wasn't illegal. You know what I'm saying? And that's
what you call a monkey.
Yeah, he was talking pause about monkeys and bananas and everything.
Yeah, for real.
I was gonna get to that.
Yeah, they texting me because like I said, I didn't know, Murder. This is a surprise he's on the show. I had all my shit lined up. We've been talking about T. I ain't know you call black niggas monkeys.
Nah. Chill. Hey, and even then, man, I'll tell you, like, it's truthfully.
You can clear it up. That's why you here.
That's why I know.
What happened?
For sure. So this is what it is, really. When it came to it, I gotta press them in any avenue. They don't want to fight me. Well, and that the 2 guys that I was saying was Gervonta Davis and Terrence Crawford. But I was just talking about them 2. I ain't talking about the bunch. And to clarify it more, Gervonta Tank Davis calls himself a gorilla, an ape, right? So I'm just referring back to everything that has been told. But the fact that I guess we're talking about when it comes to the skin complexion, then maybe it's foul. But I'm not on that at all. Like, at all. I'm just tagging 2 guys. If everybody want to be in that 2-guy lane, that's between y'all. But I'm just focusing on 2 fighters right now. And if they can't get at me, then we got to figure another way and move on.
Teofimo Lopez was recently on the Is What It Is podcast with Cameron Giles and Mason Betta, and he was put on the spot. He was asked about those monkey banana comments that he made in reference to a Gervonta Davis fight, a Terrence Crawford fight that it sounded a lot like he was calling those 2 guys monkeys. Well, it is true that Gervonta Davis often refers to himself. He calls himself a gorilla, a silverback gorilla. He does say that. But I never heard Terrence Crawford refer to himself as a gorilla or a monkey or a chimpanzee or a primate of any kind. I don't know if he has. Maybe you've seen him say it, but I haven't. And if this were the only instance like this one, where it seemed like Teofimo Lopez was saying things with his outside voice that he should be saying with his inside voice, kind of subterfuge. I don't think Teofimo kept the same energy when asked about what he said that he had when he said it. Seemed to me like he was trying to negotiate, using the right words. This line of questioning, at least from where I'm sitting, seems to have made him uncomfortable. The line of questioning you don't get within the boxing sphere for fear that the freelancers, the journos, may not gain access to a fighter if they ruffle his feathers and make him uncomfortable outside of that sphere. It's perfectly alright to ask those questions because Cameron Giles and Mason Betta are not relying on access to Teofimo or access to any one fighter or fighters to make their money. They already have money. They can ask their questions comfortably, even if those questions are somewhat taboo. Maybe the fighter doesn't like it. Maybe the fighter is uncomfortable. But they can ask those questions without fear of reprisal. It's the difference between how boxing is covered today and who's covering it and how it was covered yesterday. Yesterday, you might have a sports guy at the Daily News, or the Post, the Times, a guy who maybe works for a network, and that's who pays him. That's who pays the guy. The newspaper or the network. These days, it's a bit different because what we see these days are tantamount to freelancers. And credit to them for providing the service that they provide, but in essence, they are freelancers. And they need those relationships to stay amicable, to gain access, to provide that coverage. So they can't just ask a fighter anything and everything that comes to mind, especially something that might make the fighter uncomfortable. The fighter's team or the promoter, they can't, but Cameron Giles and Mason Betta, they can. because they're not as reliant on access to you as someone else might be, and so they did.
I think Teofimo looked uncomfortable. His tone sounded to me like a guy who was copping a plea.
Well, I was just talking about those two. I was just talking about those two guys in particular.
When asked about what he said, his tone seemed different to me than when he actually said what he said. When he said what he said, it seemed like he didn't care who heard him. But when he was asked about it,
He's being a lot more careful with his words and who exactly he was referring to. And as stated, that's not the only time that Teofimo let it slip.
let it out.
Said something that sounded a certain way.
Tio is like the little kid that's screaming for attention in any kind of way. He don't care if it's good attention, bad attention. He just want to scream for attention. Now, had that been me or Tank,
Yes.
that call him
Yes.
a racial slur,
Yes.
you know, they would have been trying to cancel us. They would have been, you know, all the bloggers would have been, you know, disrespecting us, calling us racists, and it'd have been all over all the news outlets.
Teofimo already gave the game away that he's looking to elicit reactions in whatever method he has to, even if it arches some eyebrows.
That speaks to what Terrence Crawford just said, that he's like a kid begging for attention. He's just gonna say whatever he has to say, good or bad, for attention.
Which would seem innocent enough if this were the only instance where Teofimo said something taboo, but I remember when he was at odds with Top Rank and he felt like they weren't pushing him and promoting him, in his own words he said, they can keep those black fighters, not those boring fighters, not those overpaid fighters, overrated fighters.
He made it a point to mention their race. Why would he do that? Why would he immediately go there?
Perhaps for the same reason that he likened both Terrence Crawford and Gervonta Davis to monkeys. It seems that what we're seeing from Teofimo Lopez is little more than a Freudian slip.
He's letting it slip.
Lofty explanations aside, for the sake of marketing, he turns into Karl Marx whenever he's looking for a fight, whenever he's promoting a fight.
Give me a break.
It is what it looks like. These guys, under the right circumstances, have all the courage, all the bravery to poke out their chest and ruffle feathers in a safe environment. But when asked about it, they all react the same way.
No, that's not what I meant.
It's not. And those who you might find in the comments section of a YouTube video or on Twitter egging Teofimo Lopez on, they're the same way. They only act that way online. If you press him about it, if you squeeze him about it,
No, that's not what I meant.
it never is. For those who choose to go there when it's safe to do so, when it's not so safe to do so,
No.
how original.
Know what you are, Teofimo.
It's very obvious. You're just not ballsy enough to come right out and say it because you're nowhere near as ballsy as you make yourself out to be.
None of these guys are.
Don't discount his first time at 154. Don't discount that there'd be a little growth there too. Don't go and believe it's going to be the same Crawford when he steps up to 168 if that happens. No, this is going to be a better arm Crawford, even better than he's been. This is going to be a Crawford that's now armed with that information, now armed with more confidence, now armed with the things that he needs in his mind to add another pelt. So don't be so sure that the Crawford you saw with Madrimov is not going to be different.
Sounds a lot like Teddy Atlas still likes Terrence Crawford's chances against Canelo Alvarez at 168. Canelo, who he doesn't really seem to have a high opinion of, but he does have.
He's got a high opinion of Terrence.
And Teddy's one of these guys to where when he gets an idea and he makes up his mind is made up. Irrespective of what comes afterwards, he's gonna hold to that initial idea.
Irrespective of what new information or new insights might come out, he's going to hold to that idea. This is only amplified over time. The older a guy like this gets, the more stubborn he gets. You can't convince him.
Because he's already convinced. He has already convinced himself that Terrence would be Canelo Alvarez at 168. I'm a fan of both fighters. I think they're both excellent fighters in their own right. But where before I gave Terrence a sparring chance in that fight, maybe he can upset the apple cart. Maybe he is that legendary fighter that can do it. Right now, I'm not so sure. I saw what he looked like with Madrimov. Some of that is ring rust. Some of it but some of it is old age too, because none of us are getting any younger. You had to fight a few pounds heavier than you normally do. You got touched up a bit. You didn't lose.
He won.
But it's the amount of right hands that he took in that fight, and that's not the only time I've seen Terence get caught with a hard right hand, a big right hand. I believe it was Egis Kavaliauskas that unofficially floored him with a right hand. So if Egis can land a right, and Madrimov can land some rights, so can Canelo, because he's bigger and stronger and more experienced and more durable than they are.
He's a better boxer than they are, a more decorated fighter than they are. Where some might think you're underestimating Terence, no, I think you guys are underestimating Canelo.
And I think you're underestimating Terence Crawford's age with how much weight he would have to put on and how much weight he would carry into the fight. You don't think all that added weight is going to slow him down? It's not like he's got time to fully acclimate to 168, that he's going to have 2, 3, or 4 fights there en route to Canelo. No, you're talking about a big jump, a very big jump, and he's going to have even more added weight.
More than he just had.
The victory for Terence is contingent upon being able to neutralize Canelo's power by working around it, being tricky, being defensively responsible. So when a Madrimov lands a bunch of right hands on you,
I'm supposed to believe that you're gonna go in there with Canelo, who's bigger and more durable, more battle-tested, way more experienced and skilled, higher rated. You're gonna go in there for 36 minutes with Canelo, and he don't land a right. So maybe he don't land a right. Maybe he lands a left of the body, a left hand upstairs.
36 minutes is a long time to try to avoid a guy's power. 36 minutes. You say that, well, he didn't knock out Edgar Berlanga, he didn't knock out Jaime Munguia, but those are bigger, much bigger guys than Terence Crawford. That lends itself to their durability, how much punishment they can take, that they're bigger and they're younger, whereas Terence is older and smaller. I think he's a great fighter, one of the best, but everybody's got limits. He's only human.
So listen,
If he wants to do it, he can do it. And if Canelo Alvarez is willing to oblige him, I'm willing to buy it. I'll buy the fight if they make it. But what I would prefer is to see Terence unify the junior middleweight division, which wouldn't even take long. It's only really 2 fights. That's what we're talking about. A Fundora fight and a fight with the winner of Zoo versus Murtazaliev. That's it. 3-time undisputed.
who's topping that?
Come on. He's already there. He's already gotten his feet wet at the weight. To me, he already took care of the dark horse in this division. That's what Israel Madrimov was, the dark horse. You took care of him. I think he beats Fundora.
You already handled this division's hot potato. The rest of these guys?
Can win the belts from the rest of these guys. We'll see what shakes out. We'll see what he does, because the door isn't completely closed to that Canelo Alvarez fight.
That could still happen.
Though if it doesn't, becoming a 3-time undisputed champion is the alternative, and that's nothing to sneeze at.